4 episodes ago, I asked you a question. How old are you? Has the answer changed since you listened to episode 1? Have you had a birthday maybe? Maybe you did, but mostly no. You're still the same age. You can only change your year once a year. And most of you, well, you got younger by listening to the 4 podcast episodes back to back, didn't you? Okay, anyway. Here's what I want you to ask yourself instead going forward. Has your answer to that question changed in any of the ways that really matter? Are you slightly less defensive maybe about age than you were 4 episodes ago? Are you slightly more aware of how loaded that question is, both for yourself, people you lead, maybe others around you? If yes, this episode will work. If not, well, I guess we have one more chance. This is 5 Shades of Grey, episode 5. It's kind of like the encore. It's time for the leader's move. All right, let me bring it all together, because the argument only fully lands when those 4 shades sit beside each other to allow us to see a 5th. Is that the best way to do it? Episode 1, what did we get into? Well, the demographic bill that's coming due. The shape of the workforce has gone from, if you remember, a bell to a bulb shape. Birth rates are collapsing right across the developed world. Older workers are projected to drive 57% of the U.S. workforce growth this decade alone. In the U.S., the Census Bureau is showing every sector of the American economy moving in the same direction, and not in a great way. South Korea's headlines are lying about a problem that hasn't really gone away. Boeing, the FAA, the nursing collapse, all of these can be attributed, at least in part, and in some cases in full, to this demographic disruption that's already at our doorstep. Episode 2, the Experience Conundrum, where we introduce the term tacit knowledge, the wisdom you can't codify. Well, it's leaving organizations faster than they are capturing it. In fact, they're not capturing it. Now, remember we talked about NASA. How about they forgot how to get to the moon and they brought back astronauts and other people who worked at NASA, get their secrets, get their tacit knowledge. We had state governors begging retired COBOL programmers to come back during the pandemic. We had the Apollo program as really that metaphor for every organization who's losing its institutional memory. Episode 3, the pressure points of longevity. $955 is the median retirement savings in the U.S., but people think they need $1.46 million for retirement needs. 7% of recent retirees are coming back to work in the U.S. because why? Because they can't afford the alternative. That is not eating or paying rent. 80% of older Americans face some sort of financial insecurity, and that retirement system was designed for a life expectancy of about 61. And now we're living on average 85, and many of us well past 85. Episode 4 was Age Against the Machine, aka ageism, the silent saboteur. We talked about HCL America, who had to pay just about $500,000 because a recruiter said that individual was, quote, too old. Remember that? We had issues with South Valley. We had Wendy's. We looked at Builders First Source. We looked at J&M. All of these were ageism cases, and none of those companies won. So 4 shades, all the color of gray, different angles. Now, what do we do about it? When I was writing the book, I spent some time with Roger L. Martin, a friend, a mentor, outstanding author, of course, one of the world's greatest thinkers, and former dean of Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Roger told me something that stayed with me ever since during one of our conversations. He said organizations recognize that the workforce is aging and that there are challenges. They see it, but he believes that they lack the tools to meaningfully respond. And he compared it to the old joke about the drunk searching for his keys under the streetlight, not because that's where he dropped them, but because that's where the light is. The image that Roger painted for me in that drunk key, streetlight metaphor, it's kind of haunted me ever since. Because most organizations responding to the demographic shift are AKA the streetlight response. These wellness webinars, maybe there's a diversity statement. Maybe there's a new mentorship program with a launch event, but there's no funding to follow it through. The searches are conducted under the streetlight for new candidates, but there's no light. The light isn't even good. Not really helpful. So in the metaphor with the keys, the actual interventions that turn age debt into what I call the experience dividend, well, they're over in the dark where it's uncomfortable to look. They're there in the ditch. You might have to bring your flashlight to go find them, but they're there. And they involve dismantling some of our HR systems, our job architectures, the way we do performance reviews. How do we capture tacit knowledge? How do we allow people to move from job to job or gig to gig? So none of this is comfortable. It is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And the leaders who hopefully you decide and define the next decade are the ones who are going to be willing to step away from that streetlight and go into that ditch and find the keys in the dark. So I've used the experience dividend phrase pretty much in every episode. So let me close the loop and sort of get you going on what it actually means. So the experience dividend is what your organization earns when it treats age as an asset rather than a liability. So when it treats things like tacit knowledge as strategic capital, when it builds workforce systems that work for the 25 to the 75-year-olds at the same time, when it confronts and combats, ultimately, ageism and getting it just eradicated. So this dividend is not feel good or some sort of, values poster you see in the lobbies of many organizations when you walk into their company, into their building. The experience dividend is sort of a pattern recognition concept. And what you're trying to do is to lower some of your inevitable error rates of how you're treating your workforce, because it's going to catch up and bite you. So in short, it's kind of the experience dividend is what happens when you stop fighting demographic change. It's happening, and you start figuring out a way in which to not just accommodate it, but to lead the change that's necessary. So what's your move? Well, it's not necessarily this big transformation program. You got to first kind of look at your organization as eras. Remember the rivers, rocks, and rubies. Start there first and sort of say, okay, let's stop calling people Gen X and Gen Zs and Gen Alphas and just sort of say, look, everyone goes through 3 career eras. You got to start thinking about all the knowledge that's in your organization from those 3 eras. Rivers have tons of knowledge. So do rocks, obviously, so too do rubies. Well, what are you doing to make sure not only is it captured, but how is it transferred? How do we learn from other people's learnings, their mistakes, their stories? And then when you start looking at some of the talent systems about the workforce you do have right now, not the ERP systems or the performance management systems or everything that you've had for years and years and years, why not basically take a look at it and say, yeah, Dan's right. What do we have to do differently? I don't think it's complicated. I just think it's rare. I don't think a lot of people are doing it. But when faced with the choice between that comfortable streetlight and fiddling around for your keys and going over to the ditch into the uncomfortable dark and looking for those keys, I think that's the metaphor here. And it's why many, many organizations are still accumulating age debt at what I think will be a catastrophic outcome for many of them. So if your competitors are choosing the streetlight, go for the ditch. Go find a way for you to resolve these hidden issues that are staring at you in plain sight. So what I want you to be thinking about, weirdly, is me. Like, I'm 54 as I record this. I'm aging, visibly at times, but we all age. Look in the mirror. You will see yourself as the 15-year-old, the 25-year-old, and then in increments, obviously, as you get older there. I have 3 kids. They are currently, as of this recording, 23, 20, and 19. One is heading off to a master's degree because she said, there's no way I can get a job right now. There's no jobs for me. And she's looking to land a role as an environmental policy analyst, in essence. So whether you're old, Ruby like me, whether you're middle-aged, a rock, whether you're a young river like my 3 kids, we need a new system. I genuinely believe that the organizations that get this right will define the next era of work. But the ones who don't are going to quietly, slowly, and clearly expensively decline or, at least erode. So if you've listened to all 5 episodes, thank you, first of all. I don't take that lightly. But if any of these episodes help change your mind about something, even something small, then maybe I've done my job. But more importantly, you should tell someone about it as well. There are things you can do to eradicate those 4 key issues that are happening in our organizations right now, from the demographic apocalypse / disruption to the points of ageism, to the points of not paying attention to longevity, and of course, all of that wisdom that's not being transferred. The Experience Dividend takes those 4 and says, no, we're going to do things differently around here. And if you can do that, for me, for you, then thanks ultimately for listening. So just a couple things in close here. Some questions. As you're thinking about what you're about to do, hopefully with the Experience Dividend, does your thinking acknowledge the demographic reality? Or are you still assuming the old bell-shaped workforce is going to be part of your future? Are you protecting tacit knowledge, intelligence, wisdom, the stories? Or are you letting it walk out the door at whatever age? Does your Experience Dividend ideas work for the 25, the 50, and the 75-year-old? Is there still age bias practices in language, assumptions, processes, models that you need to fix? I think those are good steps to take. So, where are we at? Well, at the end. This was the Leadership Now Takeover, 5 Shades of Grey, a 5-part limited series on the backs of a new book that I've put out called The Future of Work is Grey. If you want to go deeper, of course, it all lives in that book. It's available in audiobook format, EPUB, and of course, hardback formats. One last thing. Tell somebody, a river, a rock, a ruby, maybe all 3, that they matter. The whole point of this series and the book itself is to allow age to be part of our conversations. That's the argument. That's the series. That's the book. The future of work is gray, but there is an opportunity to turn that into gold. Thanks for listening. I'm Dan Pontefract.